There's the tweet. Let's retweet. And let's retweet. And let's just get rid of this now. I don't need that up anymore. And we're going to move that over there. Okay. I think that means we are running. I think that means we are live. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, tech fans of all sorts, shapes, sizes, persuasions. This is another Monday morning tech chat show on the SGGQA podcast channel. I, of course, am Juan Carlos Bagnell, SomeGadgetGuy, the SGG in the SGGQA. Every week, we're going to talk about some news stories. We're going to jump into some fun tech discussions, probably touch on some tech and politics, and then we've got a whole bunch of viewer interactions that I'm looking forward to. Already seeing some people pop up in the live chat. Ross Nelson on Periscope, Renato, Farid, Steve DeRoche, some really cool folks joining yet again. Aditya, hey, what's up? Aditya, no, good day, Juan, and all others. Love the new background. The lighting looks good. I'm playing around with just some different light bulbs for the studio thing, some just color changing bulbs, and it's been fun kind of trying to figure out how I want to incorporate those into my reviews. Definitely have some shooting concerns because I have a really tiny office and I'm trying to pull off some good looking video. So I'm going through and seeing what I can do to just shake up. I mean, I love my Christmas lights. I love those like rainbow LED Christmas lights, but you know, I don't want to stay put too long. I want to find some other things that we can do to mix this up. I still don't know what I want to do about those sides. The sides by my bookcase that way. There we go. Just bare walls right there. I want to find some scrolls or some other lighting accents or something. So we'll see what we can pull off. Renato Laporte, Fred, the Nitpicker, Demir Frank. That's a little bit of housekeeping. The second episode of Creator Chat is now live, featuring none other than Mr. Demir Frank. We had a 2-hour conversation about how we got started, or how he got started producing tech reviews, and then also some of the challenges that he faced in managing different communities. So, I mean, he produces videos in German, he produces videos in English, and he has sort of an interesting take on how you can produce content for different audiences with different audiences in mind. Even if it's still roughly sort of a similar tech discussion, that there are some regional considerations, and then also just some other fun chats about how much we dislike certain manufacturers. Kay Bryant, what's up on Periscope? Victor, the only one who doesn't trust scores are Android fanboys who are lacking behind Apple. I don't know what that means, Victor, but you're probably not going to find a lot of support for that kind of a statement in this chat. So, from Ellis2, the podcast was lit. I thought it was an awesome conversation, and Creator Chat is definitely something I'm going to try and keep to a weekly or bi-weekly schedule. Started off first episode with TK Bay, second episode with Demir Frank. I have another fun guest lined up for this Friday, and talking to a few other friends, branching out from just tech bloggers. So I'm hoping to really expand the conversation to all sorts of people who make things on the internet. So if you're interested in photography, if you're interested in cinematography, if you're interested in narrative, web series, comics, etc., 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 I think there are a number of different conversations we can have about the changing landscape of multimedia companies, not being beholden to any individual platform. Like, success does not mean success on YouTube. You know, we can redefine how we interact with people and how we create join conversations, create stories, and host discussions. Because as is very evident in the live chats that I get to watch every week on this Monday morning podcast, we can have a varied discussion on a number of different topics in a respectful fashion, and that's supposedly not something that you can do on YouTube, but it's really the main driving force for me continuing to do tech videos is interaction with people who really care about discussing these things while not just, screeching about chicken tendies and benchmark scores. So let's get on to this show right now and get that out of the way there. Good. So, number one, when I put out some calls, some tweets, and some questions about what you guys wanted to talk about, one of the first responses I got was to talk about the 10th anniversary of the first Android phone launching. So it was September 23rd, 2008, and the T-Mobile G1 dropped in a whole bunch of people's laps. Now, I don't feel particularly qualified to really comment on on the G1. At the time, I was hardcore into Sprint. When you're young, you make poor life decisions. No, I'm sorry. It's at the time, the G1 I looked at as this interesting BlackBerry competitor experiment. Can Google really come into this space? And we had a lot of the same reservations with Google that we have with any kind of new tech startup today. Well, they're a search company. They make really great individual services, but do you really think they can make a full operating system? And look at these early builds. It's kind of clunky. You're having to move around and swipe, and it's a little laggy. And I don't know. I don't know that they can do it. 10 years. Think about how quickly the tech landscape has changed over 10 years. So I thought what I thought was really interesting about Android back then was it seemed pretty clear that the initial design, the initial idea, the germ of an idea behind Android was to really go after juggernaut companies of the day, like BlackBerry, and trying to make something prettier, but also a lot of the focus was on that kind of corporate style interaction. And then the iPhone blew the doors off of consumer mobile computing. I think a lot of companies realize, like, you didn't necessarily need to have the same kind of robust infrastructure. The iPhone garnering so much positive buzz with consumers when, you didn't really have apps and you couldn't really install programs on it. Everything was a basic, and I mean, both in the positive and the negative sense of the word basic, web interactions. It was a 2G phone in an era where 3G was pretty normalized by that point. And it was sort of mocked and derided by a lot of the geeky elites just because it couldn't do anything. It was pretty and it was smooth, but it was essentially just a cleaned up version of Palm OS without any of the benefits of Palm OS. So the G1 comes out, and you can see that there's sort of a response and a recovery to some of the prettier aspects, but that Google is still behind Apple in just things like the fluidity of the UI, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I did not earnestly join the Android ranks for another 2 years. I had just started dabbling in participating in tech forums. I was writing a few odd articles for a friend's tech blog. I did not really get on board because at the time the G1 launched, I had already sided with HTC because this bad boy, the HTC Touch Pro, was obviously the superior smartphone computing platform. What with its amazing 3.2 megapixel camera with autofocus and its capacitive touch scroll wheel with an integrated D-pad into the front face of the controls. And the fact that it had a smaller screen, which was twice the resolution of the iPhone screen, which would then pop to reveal one of the best 5-row QWERTY keyboards that history has ever bestowed upon such a small form factor device, all in something roughly the same size as a Nokia candy bar phone. Who in their right mind would ever choose another device other than the HTC Touch Pro? This is where we cue sad trombone. Womp womp. I loved that phone. I absolutely adored that phone. But I think history has shown us that having a Windows 98 style operating system in your pocket is not, it's not what consumers wanted. So I didn't jump on the Android train until the Galaxy S, and specifically the Epic 4G on Sprint. Again, I was a big Sprint nerd, and I wanted this slider keyboard. This is what I wanted. I still kind of want one today, as evidenced by the fact that my SIM card still has not left my BlackBerry Key 2. Call me old-fashioned, but hardware keyboards rock. And the customization potential of having dedicated hardware buttons is way better than just owing to a pure Google experience of nothing but software shortcuts and apps. So, from Gansey Tech Nerd, was the HTC Touch Pro touchscreen capacitive or resistive? No, we were living the stylus life. This was a resistive touch, but at the time, HTC was getting into skinning. We take for granted, the HTC, I've already forgotten the name of the skin that they put on Android devices, but it started with Windows Mobile, where they put a sliding gesture-based layer on top of Windows Mobile to try and make it more palatable to iPhone users. We were all trying to rip off Slide to Unlock. You would flash your phone with a whole other custom ROM just to enable a lock screen. I mean, that's how deep in we got on some of these fun features and some of the nice eye candy that the iPhone could deliver, and where Apple was just beginning their onslaught of suing companies for design elements that we think are kind of silly today. And I don't believe we would get... Oh, no, there was only one Windows mobile phone that I was aware of. It was also the HTC, the HTC... I can't remember, but that was the only one I think Windows Mobile landed with a capacitive touchscreen, and then that beast lived forever as the XDA community found ways of flashing new ROMs and then flashing Android on that Windows Mobile hardware. So, yeah, it was good times. I really kind of miss those days. But 10 years ago, what don't we have on the HTC Touch Pro? Anyone want to take a guess? What is, with everything that this little juggernaut could do, camera tech, had an LED flash, capacitive scroll wheel. We were definitely looking at what we could do to copy Apple in making things pretty. What did this phone not have? Anyone? There is no headphone jack on the HTC Touch Pro. No headphone. 10 years ago, we were in the doldrums of having adapters, dongles. You had to use this mini USB port to get your audio out. Absolutely terrible. Awful solution. Guess what's still an awful solution for headphone audio? Dongles! These things suck. I hate them so much. There's going to be a video this week talking about the new Google dongle. I got a little backtracked, and I thought producing a video on the new LG Tone Pros would be more fun, and it was more fun. So I did a Bluetooth headphone review instead of doing the new Google Pixel dongle review, but it's not making me happy. As a spoiler for that review, and it'll be an early access video on Patreon, hopefully Tuesday. You're paying more for less. That's just where the market's going. You can give a company more money and expect that you'll get less than a previous generation of product. If you were hoping to have another Google dongle that could improve the audio quality, for example, like the headphone jack on my BlackBerry Key 2 is convenient, but it's not super great. Like, it's kind of mediocre audio, right? It's just, I like having this hardware built in. I can pop in some nice earbuds, and the sound quality isn't really high on my list when I'm talking about a BlackBerry device. But if I wanted to, I could go out and buy a dongle to improve the sound quality, right? So that used to be a perk of the older Pixel dongle, was that it was noticeably improved audio quality over what came in the built-in jack. Maybe not so much anymore. Maybe the revised dongle isn't that much better. So let's get into some news, because I don't want this to be a 2-hour podcast before we get to viewer Q&A at the end. So, but that was just one of the main things I felt like a lot of people wanted to talk about, those early days, the G1, and then just think about over 10 years how radically that mobile computing landscape has changed. I don't think none of us were prepared for the consumer tech revolution that we were in line for. And so there's a lot of stuff about that that's really good. But But, I think we're also starting to see how rapidly this landscape has changed, how ill-prepared we were for some of these changes. And actually, some of our news stories today are going to lightly touch on that because when it comes to society, when it comes to rules of behavior, when it comes to our legal system, tech moves way faster than we can really adapt to it. I find it wholly disingenuous when tech companies dictate certain changes and then people race to embrace those changes, and anyone who criticizes those changes is deemed some kind of worrywart or stodgy troglodyte. These things happen way faster than the market can really respond to. Look at glass-on-glass sandwich phones. Look at IR blasters, removable batteries, notches on your screens, getting rid of the 3.5 millimeter headphone jack. A company will arbitrarily, often Apple, make this kind of a decision, and then the market just has to deal with it. You don't really get a chance to truly vote with your wallet when because I almost want to use phrases like market forces, but market forces would dictate that the consumer had any kind of say by voting with their wallet as to what was going to happen, and that's not really truly the case anymore. So, getting into some news. The first piece of news that I want to cover is our current administration. This is going to be a little politics heavy. So if you guys are sensitive to the politics, if you don't like to hear stories about politics, here's your trigger warning. This is coming from the Washington Post. White House distances itself from reports that Trump could target Facebook, Google, and Twitter with a new executive order. This is one of the stories that's very concerning about our current administration because apparently there is a draft order floating around the White House about an executive order to dig into tech companies online, Google, Facebook, Twitter, social media companies, through the Department of Justice, the DOJ, like a law enforcement action to look at potential bias in how these companies segregate news and search. But no one is claiming any responsibility for the draft order. Multiple people inside this administration are all kind of playing the we don't know where it comes from. And it's becoming increasingly difficult to track it back. As the Washington Post is examining in this article, which I'll link once this video is finished processing, this could just be coming from other tech companies. Here, hold on. Let me get to a part of this article. This is coming from the article here. The document has floated to tech companies such as Facebook and lawyers at white shoe firms around Washington. In fact, the first that many at OSTP had even heard of an executive order came from an email sent by an unlikely source, Yelp, the review site. The company long has attacked Google for abusing its market power, albeit by limiting the reach of some of its competitors in search results and not political bias. Still, Luther Lowe, senior vice president for policy at Yelp, contacted White House aides in September with the draft executive order, according to two White House aides and a copy of an email shared with the Post. Reached this weekend, Lowe did not address whether he wrote or commissioned the executive order. Quote, far from riding the current tech backlash, Yelp has been consistently critical of Google for actual bias in search results in local search for their own competitive benefit, he said in a statement. Again, back to the quote, we believe this anti-competitive conduct, biasing their results in favor of their own house properties, to be a violation of U.S. antitrust law, and we have been urging both political parties, that was my emphasis, not his, urging both political parties in Congress, the administration, and regulators to investigate and prosecute this illegal bias. So this is more than just a little bit scary. If you guys have been following my podcast, you've heard me mention on multiple occasions, I do believe companies like Facebook, like Google, like Apple, like Twitter, are overdue some kind of regulatory oversight. But when I say that, what I'm saying is I want the dusty, rusty gears of bureaucracy to take their time leveraging government examination over a fast-moving competitive industry. That's like, I want to see the FTC just kind of poke around with the stick a little bit. What I am not saying is I want the Department of Justice to get involved as a law enforcement action against Google and Facebook for smoke where there is probably not any fire. When we're talking about top-down, so this is also one of those issues where Facebook and Google, major issues, right? In our 21st century economy, Facebook is acting as a curator, as a publisher, as they're wearing a number of different hats, and they're not really properly executing any of those roles while hiding behind the fact that they're just some sort of fun, lighthearted social media company. But in many places in the world, Facebook and internet are becoming synonymous because of the actions of this company and the way that social media sort of dominates any type of discussion. It's not so much that you've got a great news site, it's that you have to drive traffic through to your articles through a social media service like Facebook. And Facebook is becoming increasingly involved in even the backbone internet infrastructure of a number of countries in the world. So when we're looking at what this administration is doing, it's concerning that we're talking about leveraging the DOJ, and no one wants to own up to the actual draft order. So that's already really scary. Someone wants to wield the broadsword, but doesn't want to stand up and say, I'm the person that's trying to convince this administration to hatchet into these companies. That alone is really freaky. Now, the frustrating aspect of this, and why I think this is also a funny story, is if this draft order did come from Luther Lowe, I can't think of a worse company to soapbox as the defender of unbiased search than Yelp. Yelp, who has consistently, throughout the entire course of their existence on the internet, has been accused of manipulating reviews on their site, search on their site, in extortion-style schemes to help companies hide negative reviews so long as you pay us, mob racket-style tactics. That is not the company that we should be turning to, who should be looking to as the protector of our internet sovereignty. I just love that is the most hypocritical thing I've ever heard of. So, of course, if anyone were leveraging influence over this administration, of course it would be someone like Luther Lowe. I mean, just come on. How great is it that the vice president of Yelp, who is out there passionately trying to lobby lawmakers, sounds like a second-rate Superboy villain? Oh no, Luther Lowe, and he's found the kryptonite. So, folks, I mean, I really do feel like this is another one of those stories that should bring liberals and conservatives together. We'll disagree on the particulars. We'll disagree on how all this stuff should go down. But I think we should all agree it shouldn't go down like this. This is not the way that justice should be enacted. Yeah, I'm very disappointed in their current state of political discourse. So, of course, yeah, this has been. When did the Washington Post publish this? I really wish they would just put their dates out more clearly. So this was published on the Washington Post on the 22nd. And then, of course, as an almost immediate reply on the 23rd, Sundar Pichai at Google, the Google CEO, immediately replied with an in-house letter to Google employees. We do not bias our products to favor any political agenda. I have my concerns over the current course that Google is on when it comes to traffic, when it comes to managing their platforms. But again, I'll link this. This is from CNN Tech. Excuse me. I'll link this in the finished notes on this video when it's done. But his letter to staff starts, Recently, there have been some news stories about how we approach our work, in particular, how we present our search results. We feel privileged to be building a product that provides instant access to information for everyone, everywhere, whether you're a PhD from MIT or a student on the other side of the world using a computer for the first time. We have billions of people relying on us for accurate information, and we feel a deep sense of responsibility to deliver the highest quality results. And he goes on to talk about our mission and our values and respecting the user, respect the opportunity, respecting each other. And, I think I'm kind of over any tech company trying to sound aspirational in their approach to commerce. There's another Google story we're going to cover right after this, which sort of stands in the way of these aspirational statements from Google, the remnants of the "don't be evil" philosophy that we all sort of celebrated internally when Google was a plucky upstart changing how we used our email. And it's the little daily tweaks to algorithms, to platforms, to manipulating your subscription box on YouTube doesn't feel like it's a substantial consumer benefit more than it's a reinvestment in convincing people to spend more time on your platform. It silences voices in a quiet and underhanded fashion. It manipulates what people are going to consume, and this is why I say companies like Facebook and Google deserve some kind of regulatory investigation. But that's where I want to see an investigation from regulators, not law enforcement agencies. I'm not super stoked. From DBS, respecting the user, Google. I think I got all your ha's in there. From Fat Produce, Google seems to have abandoned the "don't be evil" mentality with the censoring of Google search for China and cooperating with the Department of Defense for improving drone tech. I feel IMO. There are a number of instances that I think warranted some closer scrutiny. I don't think any company is perfect. If we're going to live in a capitalist society, which I ultimately still do veer more towards capitalism with a healthy dose of regulation, then we need companies to push the boundaries on what is deemed permissible. And then we need some sort of counterbalance to rein in when they go a little too far. Right now, a Google or a Facebook exerts so much influence over every aspect of multimedia, conversation, politics, that it's really difficult to untangle where we should draw lines in the sand when we're using laws and guidelines or policy that was developed for radio and newspapers. So that's where I think we have a difficulty in untangling this conversation. And then that's also why we can confuse so many other aspects of this conversation when it comes to things like, net neutrality. We're talking about like the bare minimum level quality of protections for how we interact with each other online, and we can't even agree politically. Most of the population does. I mean, we're talking about 80% of the United States citizenry seems to think that some sort of light touch regulatory action would be a good idea. But I digress. So the other story that I want to point to with Google, this is one of those things, Sundar Pichai goes out there and he says, hey, this is the situation. We're all about choice and helping the end user. We're totally stomping all over competition in Europe, and that's why we got fined $4 billion by the EU. But no. It's all about choice. And you can choose us, or you can just choose not to have a smartphone. Let me just throw to the screen share. So this is a story that was sent in by a couple people. Nicholas Cincinnati, my sexy potatoes pal, sent this in. Why I'm done with Chrome. A few thoughts on cryptographic engineering. This is cryptographyengineer.com. It's an editorial. It's a little long. I'm not going to read through all of this because I want you to go and hit his site. Give this guy a little traffic because, again, I think a lot of people are going to be apt to disagree with his position on this matter. But it's one of those points when something's worth talking about, we should talk about it and we should disagree about it. And I'm leaning towards kind of agreeing with him. Why I'm more apt to be changing my own personal behavior on the apps and services that I currently use. So this is why I'm done with Chrome. And he has like a little intro paragraph here, which I'm going to read. This blog is mainly reserved for cryptography, and I try to avoid filling it with random "someone is wrong on the internet" posts. After all, that's what Twitter is for. But from time to time, something bothers me enough that I have to make an exception. Today, I wanted to write specifically about Google Chrome, how much I've loved it in the past, and why, due to Chrome's new user-unfriendly forced login policy, I won't be using it going forward. So he breaks down a brief history of how we got to Chrome, the dark days of internet browser wars, and what's changing now with how Google is shipping the latest update to Chrome, which automatically signs the browser into your Google account for you. And I didn't realize that I was on this part of the population too, where he mentions for years he ignored logging into Chrome, and Chrome would keep asking, "Oh, do you want to log in, and do you want to sync, and do you want to do all these things?" And he'd say, "No, I'm cool, Chrome. It's all right." And now the newest builds of Chrome just take that helpful step for you. And he's reached out to people on the Chrome team, and he's tried to get replies. And some of the replies that he's gotten don't seem to make a lot of sense for what they say they're trying to address. So this is one of the replies. Note that it doesn't turn on sync. You still have to explicitly opt in to syncing your data. The goal is to remove a problem people had. People logged in as account A in the content area, but syncing as as account B, and bad confusion would ensue. So one of the examples he brings up is you're logged into your Chrome browser, but then someone, like a friend, uses your computer and logs into their own Chrome Gmail account. So now you've got their Gmail cookies in your Chromie chocolate, right? Oh, I should have said peanut butter. They've got their Gmail peanut butter in your Chromie chocolate. And that's not peanut butter jelly time. I'm mixing all of these metaphors. This is terrible. So I like to point to the fact that there are more than a few of us who have multiple Gmail accounts, right? I have a personal Gmail account, and I have a more professional Gmail account, and then I still have a couple older accounts that I don't utilize a whole lot anymore, like my SomeGadgetGuy stuff. Like I pulled all my videos off of YouTube from my SomeGadgetGuy account, recording tag, voiceover philosophy, stuff like that, because I had all of the subscribers I needed, but I wasn't getting the same quality, the same number of views. So they pulled all of my monetization from that YouTube channel. And I'm like, well, I don't want to give you any benefit, so I pulled all my videos. It's mutually unbeneficial. Thanks, Google, but thanks for nothing. This seems like kind of a harsh step to take to solve an issue that I don't think a lot of people really have, right? I don't think that's really a problem. If you have multiple accounts like me, you probably understand some of the distinction between I'm logged into Chrome as one account, but I'm also looking at my email from another account. And even my parents are tech savvy enough to say like, oh, well, let me just log into my email real quick, but I'll pull up an incognito window so it doesn't mess with any of your logins or anything like that. I'm not super keen on this push for Google to helpfully take these steps for you, just get you around some of these privacy issues or these login problems, and we'll just do it for you. We'll just flip that switch on you and everything's a-okay. So I mean, you guys have heard me kind of whinge on about this in the past. I've shifted over to Firefox as my desktop browser, and the newest updates for Firefox on my phone are pretty snazzy. I still think Chrome's a little snappier in performance, I'm not going to lie. But I like, over the last 2 years, I've actually really enjoyed diversifying my tech platforms. It started with OneDrive. That was maybe the keenest success of Windows Phone back in the day, was getting me invested in using OneDrive as a cloud backup and storage solution, which then was a huge benefit when I signed in, and I've been, I pay for Microsoft Office and all of the cloud support, multiple accounts, huge storage that you get. that's a win-win for me. I mean, you spend less on storage and get the benefit of the full Microsoft Office suite. This podcast not sponsored by Microsoft. Really wish I could land some of those Microsoft dollars, guys. So that was the first foray. I kind of still keep Google Photos on in some sort of background sync, but I'm less inclined to really leverage or use Google Photos because I've got cloud storage solution that I like in place instead. Then flipping over and not really getting heavily invested in Google Docs or Google Drive. Never used iCloud. iCloud just seems like a terrible proposition when it comes to price to performance. And then that also helped encourage other lifestyle decisions. Like, instead of spending even more on cloud storage, I just went out and bought a NAS. So now I've got my own managed cloud server that's all mine, encrypted, protected, and I can use it however I see fit. They're hard drives that live on my network. They're not hard drives that live in someone else's computer. And that's become an even bigger, a bigger part of my strategy. But then every individual little service, like I've completely blocked Facebook from my phones. I use a third-party app to casually interact with Facebook. And now things like web browsers, a point of entry where, I mean, literally every embarrassing aspect, every sensitive piece of information, every nuance of how you live your life goes through some type of app or web browser. So I think it's not completely unreasonable for some people to have significant concerns over how data is leveraged, data is interacted with. There was another, actually, I think I caught it from a link on USA Today talking about how Google is going to maintain an open policy for third-party developers to leverage your Gmail data. And, as long as it's clear that you've let a third party use all of the data in your Gmail, then that's totally fine. But I don't think I don't know that a lot of consumers will ever fully understand the depths to which an app or a plugin, a browser plugin, Chrome plugin will have access to all of that information. On top of some of the reports that we've seen on Google tracking aborted searches. So like if you're logged into Chrome, you start typing a search and then decide against it. And even that information is cached and stored against your username in the big bucket of data of behavior that they have on you. I'm not quite to putting on the tinfoil hat because I still use Android phones. I would love for there to be some other kind of competition. But I'm getting a lot closer, and it's just further reinforcing. I like spreading some of these things out a bit. I like using some of these other company solutions, and there are some really exciting things happening in some of these other consumer-facing services. So I don't know, just food for thought. Google, don't be evil. So anyway, I'm gonna take a little sip of coffee here. Gansey Tech Nerd, how good are VPNs for privacy, TunnelBear or Nord? Do they even protect our privacy from data guzzlers like Google Chrome, Facebook, etc.? So again, we're talking about multi-layered strategies for protection. I'm not really qualified to speak to the nuances of that. I am nowhere near white hat, right? I have some personal experience in the matter, but many people in our chat right now are probably as or more experienced than I am in a variety of those types of solutions. To my common knowledge, investigative awareness of VPN as a solution, VPN is great for preventing outside examination of the traffic that you're engaging in. So it would potentially block an ISP from looking at the quality of data that you send to other companies and you receive from other companies. But I don't think it would do anything if you used VPN with Google products and services logged in and synced to that specific account. Like, I don't think that does anything to manage the relationship you have with an individual company to that degree. Someone please correct me in the chat if I have misread that situation. But I don't think that if your concern for privacy is all of your giant bucket of data in Google, then a VPN I don't believe will do anything to manage that that security concern. Ugh. So I did way too much talking last week, and my voice is starting to recover. And now we're doing a podcast. All right, moving right along. We've got some FCC news. Let me blow through these. I'm going to try and do this real quick because from Aladdin, do you have a review of the OnePlus 6 camera? Patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, and you can see a 19-minute review of the cameras on my very appreciated OnePlus 6. So yes, that does exist. From Diehard 2131, just to tell you, knowing one of your beefs with iPhone cameras is that they record mono audio. The XS now does stereo. Finally, that was one of my most popular tweets from the iPhone announcement. Was I forget exactly how I phrased it, but it was something along the lines of, after 10 years, Apple finally realized that many humans have 2 ears. All right. Okay, I can't get sidetracked. Sorry, guys. You're posting some great stuff here in the live chat, but let me just blow through these. FCC, not a big fan of their current strategy. And a lot of people are looking at how they can sue the FCC to maybe course correct on some of their terrible policy. From Tech Dirt, court orders FCC to hand over bogus data on bogus net neutrality comments. You might recall when the Trump FCC killed net neutrality, the public comment period, the only chance consumers had to actually offer their opinion, was plagued with all manner of identity theft and bogus comments. Oddly, the FCC didn't seem too concerned that dead people were filing comments to the FCC website supporting their extremely unpopular decision, and even actively blocked law enforcement investigations into what happened. So this is Tech Dirt is commenting on one lawsuit. This was, I've already lost the name. Dang it. Let me pull it up. Jason Prechtel sued the FCC in late 2017, refined his lawsuit, and now a ruling by Christopher Cooper of U.S. District Court for the District of Columbia ordered the FCC to hand over at least some of the data. This is right on the heels of the New York Times also suing the FCC for the same information. The New York Times has, this is by way of Ars Technica. The New York Times has sued the Federal Communications Commission over the agency's refusal to release records the Times believes might shed light on Russian interference in net neutrality repeal proceeding. So the Times complaint, the requested issue is in this litigation involves records that will shed light on the extent to which Russian nationals and agents of the Russian government have interfered with the agency notice and comment process about a topic of extensive public interest, the government's decision to abandon net neutrality. So this is a Freedom of Information Act request. These are public comments. This is a public agency. And the FCC's main argument against releasing this information is, if they release this information and they release the logs, and remember, this is the FCC that claimed, they put out the conspiracy theory that they were facing denial of service attacks during this comment period, and that because they were facing this sort of weaponized information attack, that we couldn't trust the comments that were coming in pro or con, for or against net neutrality. And this is all at the time that this was the only method that people had to actually discuss this. I think it's worth pointing out that a similar influx of traffic happened when Tom Wheeler was chairman of the FCC. And again, we all thought he was going to be a wireless industry, an ISP industry shill, but he actually did reply, I think, fittingly to the public comments period when we were talking about fast lanes. Remember, we were going to have tiers and fast lanes, and then the internet freaked out, and then he backtracked off of that and immediately course corrected to try and revive the OIO, which Verizon sued the federal government over. That's a really overly condensed TLDR, but that's where we were, and that's where we are now. So the FCC's big argument is, well, we can't release this information. We can't release server logs because then it would potentially give people insight into our system, and it would make us all more vulnerable to future attacks. You have done nothing to safeguard this commenting process. If anything, we need that information more than ever to properly safeguard public commenting systems between citizenry and government regulators so that this doesn't happen again. And I think they've ceded any credibility in this discussion by claiming there was a denial of service attack and then 2 years later backtracking on that, saying, "Oh no, it was see, the thing is, it was an appointee from the Obama administration. He got it all wrong. So, no harm, no foul. We still killed net neutrality. Yeah, that's still dead. But the reasons why we killed net neutrality, they were fake. But it's not on us. We didn't do it. It was Obama. We said Obama, so that was the dog whistle you all heard. Now you can all be upset about Obama again." So yeah, regulatory capture, it's a real thing, and it's working really well. So now two lawsuits against the FCC have ruled in favor of the FCC delivering this information. So again, the rusty, dusty gears of political bureaucracy, maybe by 2020, we'll actually see them release this information, which should just be a matter of public record, and would actually be beneficial towards safeguarding American interests across the globe as it pertains to cyberspace. But, that's not treasonous or anything, improving corporate relationships with regulatory agencies for the benefit of corporate profits at the expense of democracy. Perish the thought. Okay, this is another one. We've got 2 more FCC stories. I promise. We're gonna move through. This is another one from Ars Technica. FCC angers cities and towns with $2 billion giveaway to wireless carriers. This is hilarious. Remember all of this stuff, killing net neutrality and making sure that corporations can't be regulated like, utilities. This is all for the benefit of competition. The Federal Communications Commission's plan for spurring 5G wireless deployment will prevent city and town governments from charging carriers about $2 billion worth of fees. The FCC proposal, to be voted on at its meeting on September 26th, in 2 days, limits the amount that local governments may charge carriers for placing 5G equipment, such as small cells, on poles, traffic lights, and other government property in public rights of way. The proposal, which is supported by the FCC's Republican majority, would also force cities and towns to act on carrier applications within 60 or 90 days. The FCC says this will spur more deployment of small cells, which have antennas often no larger than a small backpack, but the Commission's proposal doesn't require carriers to build in areas where they wouldn't have done so anyway. So most city and state governments seem to think that this is a bad idea, that the FCC shouldn't be able to dictate what kinds of caps or what kinds of fees that local governments can charge for what is often a near monopolized internet service environment. So the FCC plan proposes upfront application fees of $100 for each small cell and annual fees up to $270 per small cell. So rural governments also cry foul because many of the arguments against this current FCC implementation of internet regulation, they're trying to claim that companies like Verizon, like Comcast, can't improve connectivity or broadband infrastructure for more rural communities because there's just so much in their way, so many regulations in their way, and the costs are just so high. Where I've been bringing this up for the last couple weeks, the lobbyist groups for small and for large internet service providers, carriers, and landline broadband infrastructure have all said that they're purposely withholding any type of infrastructure improvement because the internet should be funded like a utility. Their own lobbyist groups have called the internet a utility which is as valuable as water or electricity. And they cannot improve infrastructure, build out infrastructure, increase speeds. They can't do anything until they get more public funds. They just need more tax dollars. They have not gotten enough in sweetheart deals, zoning, caps on fees, in preferential treatment, local laws which prevent competition. Not enough. They need more direct tax dollars so that they can improve service to your area, because you're just not profitable enough. F you if you don't live in an area of the country that has Google Fiber. Because if you live somewhere other than a Google Fiber zone, then Comcast just doesn't have to make your internet any faster. F you. You don't matter. You don't pay them enough. So they can't do anything until they get more public funds, but they can't be regulated like a utility, a gas, shock, dropping the jaw. Oh no. So this is again regulatory capture doing its job. Why should a rural town with limited means of infrastructure and support expect any type of reasonable fee processing for utilizing public land, utilizing public infrastructure, getting to benefit from all of the poles, the roads, the access, the teams, the support, the repairs? When a calamity befalls, taxpayers are also going to pay for all of that again. But they shouldn't be compensated for that. Your tax dollar is at work. That's great. So Verizon should just get carte blanche to do business however they see fit, the lowest possible fees that they dictate what's reasonable, not the community. The community can't look at what does it cost to operate repair crews, to keep roads paved, to keep poles upright, and then charge some fee which is commensurate with that level of support. No. The federal government gets to dictate. Remember, this used to be a conservative issue, states' rights. This used to be a fiscal conservative talking point, was not letting federal regulators dictate what city and state governments could decide for their unique populations. So, one last story. Because I touched on this last story, I want to say about a month ago, but all of these podcasts kind of blur together, so I'm probably wrong. But looking at this story right here, sent in from another viewer, wireless carriers throttle video for no good reason, researchers find. This is from motherboard.vice.com. I commented on this story a while back. This is the app named Weehee, which signs people up, and you can do data traffic tests. And right now, I think they're currently testing in 160 countries. This is from the first paragraph of the article. If your Netflix or YouTube stream is crappy, there's a good chance your wireless provider is just trying to milk you for more money, according to new research out of Northeastern University. While ISPs have historically claimed that they only slow down network traffic in very specific cases of network congestion to prevent network slowdowns for other users, the university's latest research indicates that's not true. So we had commented on this. We had commented on this sort of generically when Weehee first started making a few headlines that supposedly high traffic situations are managed by your ISP and that they are agnostically applied. The ISP is not examining the quality of the data, the source of the data, or where the stream is coming from. It's just looking at heavy congestion situations and managing that way. Well, that is not only not true, but now carriers are building business models around throttling video specifically. And it seems specific sites are targeted far more aggressively than others. Again, YouTube and Netflix are hit way harder in terms of throttling quality than other types of high traffic situations, high traffic services. And that's where we arrive at another chip against consumers, another just small tick of a carving in terms of consumer protections. Anyone who was stomping around after the FCC repealed net neutrality going, see, I can still upload my memes, man. See, I can still watch my videos, man. The internet didn't crumble, man. The day after, well, you're kind of an idiot because no one was expecting the internet to just explode the day after net neutrality was abolished. This is one of those situations where carriers can now exert influence over the traffic that you consume. And they can target specific services to degrade the experience, to make it a pain point for you in using that service, and then charge you more to fix the problem that they created. They broke something, and they have a great solution to fix it, and all you have to do is pay even more money. Kind of like microtransactions with loot boxes, kind of like iPhones with headphone dongles. The company created the problem by breaking their own product, and you get to foot the bill for fixing their breaking their own product. So that's why we get to a point where Verizon can have 3 different tiers of unlimited, and none of them are really unlimited. This is what a world without net neutrality will increasingly resemble, and why I keep pointing to my conservative brethren to help us in this conversation. Because if you care about free market economies, if you care about competition, if you care about, disruptors in the marketplace, you cannot get there without some light touch regulatory action, which resembles what we had with the telephones back when AT&T was divested, back when we broke up Ma and Pa Bell. If we hadn't broken up Ma and Pa Bell, you would not have Verizon. You would probably not have companies like Comcast or Charter or Spectrum. If we hadn't broken up Ma and Pa Bell, we'd all probably still be renting landline phones because that was the only way you could have telephone access. But look at some of the general trends that we see now. Wireless carriers, it's now the preferred business model that consumers will just perpetually lease their phones. What does that look like? That looks like AT&T in the 60s. That is not a good look. We fought really hard to break that stuff up, and we also utilized the Telecommunications Act, which was 50 years older than divestiture through AT&T. So we should look at some of the lessons we learned from the past and see what we can do to not make the same mistakes today with an intelligence and a networking resource that could be a huge benefit to all of the citizenry, all of the population of the world, unless it falls into the hands of major corporations that can dictate what we can and can't do on it. It makes me sad. So, from Marvin C., Ajit Pai sipping coffee from giant coffee mug.jpg. That's hilarious. One of the reasons why, Mega Pickle mug, Ellis2. Yeah, I've been drinking tasty beverages out of my Mega Pickle mugs. Hold on, let me just take a quick tasty beverage break. Oh man, I don't think I've tasted water that delicious, and it's probably because of the delivery mechanism I'm using. So that's pretty great. Gadget Girls, I love your channel. Heart, heart, heart. Oh, Gadget Girls, I think you're pretty keen too. One of the reasons why I've been a little lit up about net neutrality issues over this last week was because of another story of a country that is one of our primary competitors on the world scene, and that's China. And China's recent business practices involving blocking Twitch. This comes by way of BBC News. China blocks Twitch game streaming service. Video game streaming service Twitch has been blocked in China. Since the 20th of September, Twitch's website has been unreachable from the country, and its app has been removed from the local Apple App Store. Twitch has confirmed that it is being blocked, but it has not said why the authorities have imposed the restriction. The service was cut off shortly after enjoying a significant bump in popularity among Chinese gamers. So, China is if you're of a more Western perspective, sort of a Western privileged background, China is one of those situations that we can point to as a boogeyman, and I do agree with some of the criticisms regarding nanny state policing of content. I think the Democrats will always wear music censorship as a black eye for the party when it comes to media, multimedia. Tipper Gore out there saying, rap lyrics are terrible. And what we got out of that was policing music by putting explicit lyrics stickers on CD cases. But the sentiment of, the Jack Thompson video games are murder simulators idea of protecting the children, I think always falls apart when you look at media being a broad spectrum of experiences that are crafted for different age groups, not video games are for the kids. So all video games need to be good for kids, which isn't true. I mean, it's like saying all movies need to be acceptable for toddlers. I mean, a lot of companies are trying to make that PG-13 argument happen when they should be making rated R movies, but I digress. So China can be pointed to as a boogeyman of state overreach. Where I'm concerned is the pendulum swing against the state having too much authority has ultimately landed on us giving the same type of scary authority to the corporations that grant us access to the internet. And I don't think that that's a good solution either. I think reality should be somewhere in the middle. A constant back and forth fight between some type of government regulatory agency and corporations pushing the boundaries on what they can and can't do. There, I think we get the best consumer benefit. That's my opinion. It's not government is bad or free market is bad. It's both actually kind of suck, and people who are stuck in the middle should be able to exert influence in different directions when one side overreaches. When government overreaches, we turn to our companies to say, hey, help us break this up. And then when corporations overreach, we turn to our government to say, dude, not cool. And then we pull that back. We shouldn't ever be advocating for policy. Realistically, we shouldn't be advocating for policy that pushes all of the control in one direction or the other. I read another article over the last week saying like, oh, we're going to have a bifurcated internet in the next couple of years. We're going to have the internet that everyone consumes and then the internet that's controlled by the state a la China. And we already kind of have that. We already do. Someone else, and I'm sorry, the live chat has been going by too quickly. Someone else also mentioned, the John Oliver report that I was loosely talking about as it pertains to Facebook's influence over internet service, and how now there are numerous countries on this planet that Facebook is the walled garden, the AOL-style walled garden that people consume all of their internet traffic through, especially because of these non-net neutrality policies. Facebook can go to a local smartphone carrier and say, we'll pay for all of the traffic that goes into and out of Facebook. So you can prioritize. Your customers don't get charged any gigabytes for anything that goes through Facebook. And then Facebook suddenly becomes the de facto standard for internet traffic. Wow, how convenient. So that's the kind of stuff that I think we need to be on guard against. It's a terrifying state of affairs to see. And this is also going to play into my very next story. We're going to start talking about some Apple news here too. Your country creating some kind of social media currency, like ranking you as a citizen in the same way that we rank topics on Reddit, and then tying Google search results to your actual phone number. So there is no anonymity. There is no protected class of sensitive search for topics which the state might deem, as I don't know what phrase I want to use there, but scary topics that you're not supposed to look into. And at the same time, here in the United States, we're fighting a corporate influence, which is going to degrade services just for increasing shareholder value over the next fiscal quarter. I got a super chat. Big Migs Tech. Great insight, bro, especially on Easy's stream on Saturday. You dropped that knowledge, man. Well, Big Migs, thank you for dropping by this chat, too. I spent a little time, about 2 hours, on Easy Tech's live stream, where we had a crazy lineup. Painfully Honest Tech jumped in, Total Tech jumped in, Viper. It was my first chance getting to speak face-to-face with Viper, and he is hilarious. I would definitely recommend checking out his YouTube channel, too. Bring in a huge, almost pro wrestler energy to all of his tech videos. And I'm so happy to see people diversifying away from just like the really dull, over it tech commentary. Hey, it's your boy, it's Gadget Guy. We got this new phone in. It's going to be lit. It's going to be fresh. We're going to take it through its paces. I'm going to tell you why you shouldn't buy it, because the only acceptable phones to buy are Pixels or iPhones or Galaxies, because those are popular. Those do real well for my SEO. So when I do a video about an HTC or an LG, those videos don't do well unless I put it in the title that you should not buy it. So that's why we're going to talk about this stuff. But I don't really get lit up. I don't get excited, or I don't have fun with tech. So that's how we're going to do. That's what we're going to do. And, smash that like button, smash that subscribe button, hit that bell notification. Make sure you're always on the tip of the spear with what's going down on this channel, because you want to know what you already know. And that's what I'm going to tell you. I'm not going to tell you something you don't know, because then you will be challenged. Your assertions will be challenged, and that makes you uncomfortable. If that makes you uncomfortable, then you're not going to want to stick around. So I'm going to tell you everything that you want to hear, and then my YouTube payouts get bigger, Bill. That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So, I had a lot of fun on Easy Stream. Ali G reviewing tech. Oh, Andrew, I love you, brother. Let's get into some Apple news. I'm doing really well with news. I've got 3 more links, and we're almost done. Okay. Apple is quietly giving people trust scores based on their iPhone data. I saw a lot of people get freaked out by this story, and I'm kind of torn. I really want to get, okay, those of you in the live chat, listening ears on, I want to get your opinion on this, because I don't know how I'm supposed to feel about what Apple is doing here. And I do think it's important that we are weighing Apple's practices here against how a Facebook might do something similar, okay? So let me jump into the article. This is by way of the independent.co.uk. Oh, it's independent.co.uk. It's the Independent. Apple has quietly introduced trust scores for people based on how they use their iPhones and other devices. The tech giant, which last month became the first public company worth more than $1 trillion, said in an update to its privacy policy that the scores would be determined by tracking the calls and emails made on Apple devices. In an update to its privacy, Apple said the rating system could be used to help fight fraud through specific examples of how this would work. Though specific examples of how this would work were not given. The provision first spotted by VentureBeat appears in an update to the iTunes Store and privacy page and comes ahead of the release of the iPhone XS and XS Plus on Friday, the 21st of September. Quote, to help identify and prevent fraud, information about how you use your device, including the approximate number of phone calls or emails you send and receive, will be used to compute a device trust score when you attempt a purchase. The submissions are designed so Apple cannot learn the real values on your device. The scores are stored for a fixed time on our servers. I am very frustrated that upon delivering that piece of information, the quotes from Apple, The Independent immediately starts editorializing that this is just like that episode of Black Mirror. That is not true. This is not the doom and gloom situation that I believe it to be. I do believe leveraging user data in a controlled on-device scenario could be a benefit to reining in specific types of fraud. As your user accounts, your iTunes login, are increasingly used for more sensitive interactions with healthcare, with payment processing, a lot of people out there using Apple Pay, and then just safeguarding your own personal information. Apple has a ton of information on you that they can leverage to see any behavior which is outside the norm. It's annoying, but when I fly overseas and I make a big purchase and my credit union says, hey, that's not where you live, is this you? That's actually a benefit, that they are so aware of my purchasing behavior, of my banking behavior, that when they see something out of the norm, they can contact me and I can say, oh yeah, sorry, I forgot to notify you I'm in Germany. Or, whoa, hey, no, that's not me. Shut it down. Shut it all down. So if we're taking Apple at their word, if they are being honest about how this is being conducted, that granular information is collected on the phone, stored in your phone's encryption, because you should be encrypting your phone. You put a password on your phone. It's locally stored on your phone. And then just a dull, dumb aggregate score is uploaded to Apple servers and deleted after a period of time. I actually think that this is a good thing. I actually think that this is a benefit. I'm not concerned about that. If this were 5 years ago and every bit of your behavior were uploaded into a CSV file on an Apple server and that's how the score was generated, I'd be like, hell no. I'd be like, oh no, turn that off. But this is why I'm really positive on neural processing AI-style computer cores on our phones. Less information actually leaving the device, more information being processed on the device. If I want to do a translation, the translation can happen through an MPU with stored local information as opposed to sending my queries up to a server in the cloud to get that reprocessed and sent back down. If my phone did a better job of learning my speech, behavior, mannerisms, all of that could be learned and processed on the device instead of having a giant bucket of sound files, of sound clips of my voice queries up on a Google server. And also, this is one of those few areas where I still kind of trust Apple a little bit more than I trust Google, definitely a lot more than I trust Facebook. Just because Apple traffics in my user data to try and sell me iPhones. Google traffics in my user data to create more of a healthy advertising ecosystem for third-party players that want to leverage my behavior for their own consumerism. I'm not really super scared about this. I wish the disclosure on it were clearer, and I wish Apple were more public-facing about what's being collected, how it's being collected, where it's being stored, and what the benefit is. But currently, until I see more evidence that something nefarious is going on, I'm kind of okay with this. So what are your thoughts? Where do you see that line being drawn between privacy and security? Someone else brought up a really funny example, one of my friends online, that it's not wholly dissimilar. Like, we take for granted a future where we have Star Trek computers, right? Think about the voice searches that you see on Star Trek The Next Generation. The Starship Enterprise computer knows everything about every tiny little detail of every officer on board the USS Enterprise, every guest that drops by, every head of state on the flagship ambassador starship of the Federation. And I still have those aspirations that we can get to a future that somewhat resembles that. So how do we get there? And is this a step towards that, or is this a step towards more of a 1984 authoritarian security police state? So I don't know. What do you guys think? This is from Erwin Soto, another super chat. I'm not entirely sure what you're getting at, Erwin, but hi Juan, here, extra donation for last week, seeing your reaction about my iPhones, iPod thought. I love what you do here. Thanks. Erwin, thank you so much for supporting production on this channel. Thank you for the super chat. I'm not entirely sure what it is that you're trying to tell me here, so I do apologize, but I'm glad you're enjoying the show. So from Kate Jones, is this limited to iPhones? What about MacBooks? That's a very good question too, but it does seem to be a data collection policy built into iOS. I don't see anything necessarily pointing to macOS, OS 10 or anything like that. But again, it's frustrating to me that the initial knee-jerk reaction from the author of this article, which I will be linking in the show notes, is, well, you're creating the score and now you can rank people on social media. And that's a far cry from what Apple is claiming, that this information can be, that this information can even be accessed. That's why I'm I'm a little frustrated with the reporting on this. Aditya Anil, doesn't the NPU have the provision to learn user patterns and ensure some form of local security to prevent fraud? Aditya, yeah, that's exactly why I want better AI on our phones. I want a better co-pilot. I don't want the phone to take over my camera. I think that's mostly garbage. What I want is the phone to better anticipate, predict, and learn my behavior for my benefit and not have to rely on a server processing my information up in the cloud. Brett Carlton, we need Vulcans. We do need Vulcans. I mean, we probably won't get to Vulcans, but man, if our AI looked like Data from Star Trek, I'd feel so much better about the future. Again, it's growing up reading Isaac Asimov novels, the 3 Laws of Robotics. That's totally the future I want. Is a machine whose first goal in life is to prevent harm befalling a human. It makes me sad. From LS2, it's kind of great, but it's kind of scary at the same time. The Sentinel 909, I think we are all on our own. I think we are all in on our own info being handed out. From LS2, as there is no disclosure, they may still sell data, and I still remember the fappening of the iCloud breach. So from Ellis, again, I want to take these companies at their word, right? I want to say the company is making a claim. Do they live up to the claim? I don't believe Facebook lives up to their claims on privacy and security because their entire business model surrounds selling aggregate user behavior, and you become a part of the product that Facebook sells. You are not the customer. Apple has always handled that differently, has always had a different relationship between their customers' information, and other organizations that do business with Apple. Other companies that do business with Apple, there seems to be more of a barrier in place. So until something happens that Apple turns their user base into more of a product, I'm willing to go down that conversation road with Apple that they are better about handling user data than that. When it comes to individual instances like the fappening, that wasn't an attack on Apple servers. Personal information didn't get out in the fappening because some hacker 1990s style went up against the Apple mainframe with techno lights behind them and took down Apple security. It happened because people were able to sort of socially engineer the passwords out of celebrities. And it wasn't that the fappening happened all at once. It was that this was sort of an underground traffic of getting into iCloud accounts and siphoning off personal information and releasing it to other members of that community. And then, of course, it starts to build a little popularity, and then some person decides to broadcast that that's what's happening, and then it all snowballs out of control from the community of people. I'm not saying that it was a good thing that they were doing this. I'm just saying, it only takes one idiot loudmouth to ruin it for everybody. No, personal information should be kept private, and those people were assholes for compromising celebrity accounts. But it also helped to demonstrate after the fappening, man, did normal people start caring about things like two-factor authentication on their Google and Apple accounts. So it had a positive benefit. I feel bad for all of the people involved in having their personal content spread all over the internet, like so much gross porn. But the positive aspect of that was, hey, turn on this setting in your Gmail and people won't be able to do that to you. So yeah, again, I don't lay the blame at Apple's feet for major data breaches like the fappening. That's very different than when Facebook allows a third-party plugin. Take this wacky poll, and now we have every piece of your information. What Real Housewife's wife are you? And then they get access to everything in your Facebook account. That's way more insidious. Super chat from Andrew. Real quick, is there any dongle solution that comes close to the quad DAC from LG phones? So, Andrew, let me table that question after I get through my next 2 news stories, please type that question out again, and we'll cover that in the end. I am so close to wrapping up the news. Normally, news takes me 2 hours, and it's only going to take me an hour and a half today. I'm so happy. Okay, real quick. 2 other quick Apple stories that I want to get to. From Erwin, using the iPod on the Project Fi thing from last week. Erwin, yes, of course. Erwin asked a series of questions on how to use an iPod with Project Fi for better audio quality and a headphone jack, and wanting to do something that looked really, really kind of funny. So we had a really fun conversation about Erwin's how to shame people without headphone jacks conversation. Okay, Apple. So talking about Apple and headphone jacks and hearing loss, this is a story that people are celebrating, and it makes me want to shove my keyboard through my face. Like to take my really awesome mechanical keyboard switch, I can't pull it up because it's going to knock over my camera, with all of these really tasty cherry switches that go clickety-clack, and just continue pressing it until parts of my face come out through the keys like some sort of gross Play-Doh press experiment. This story drives me crazy. This is by way of Inverse.com. iOS 12 has brought a new feature to AirPods, Apple's futuristic buds. Upon its release, Apple touted iOS 12's capability to help curb smartphone addiction and encourage users to up their cybersecurity game, but the handsets weren't the only piece of hardware benefiting from the new software. Indeed, iOS 12 has surreptitiously introduced Live Listen, an AirPod-specific upgrade with the ability to turn the earbuds into a budget pair of hearing aids. Though it was barely advertised by Apple, iPhone users have already begun acquainting themselves with the new software, and many have realized this could be one of the most versatile hardware features Apple has ever released. I need everyone's help in sharing discussions on hearing health. Not enough to just kind of sit back and watch a few videos, but like I took a camera crew down to UCLA to talk to one of the top audiologists in the country and have a conversation about increased rates of hearing loss in teens and young adults over the last 10 years. What have we seen rise over the last 10 years is a radical increase in consumer multimedia consumption through portable computing devices, starting from the iPod and moving through smartphones and personal media players, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. I find this to be especially galling coming from Apple, the company so cheap that they have never included earbuds with interaural tips. That they've never, from the earliest days of the iPod and moving through the iPhone, to save on pennies of rubber that would produce a good seal internally in the ear to block out noise and help you listen at a lower intensity. To help pad their profits, they have never included adjustable fit earbuds in with any of their products. But they turned white earbuds into a fashion statement. Moving into the AirPods, this is not a good solution for long-term listening. Not having any seal to block out noise in your environment is a bug. It is not a feature. I know a lot of people will say, I like being able to hear what's going on around me. And then I'll just as likely hear conversations from other people saying like, oh yeah, but you got to turn them up so you can block out all that noise around you. That is significantly contributing to generations of people who will experience chronic, sustained, and persistent hearing loss far earlier than they should be. And now, Apple's come up with this handy solution that you can use the microphone in your phone to communicate with your AirPods as sort of a cheap hearing aid solution. But I want you to think about that. You're going to magnify the sound from your phone mic into a pair of earbuds, which still don't seal the ear, which still don't protect you from noise in your environment, and you're going to start ratcheting up the volume of the subject that you're pointing your microphone at. This gets so loud that it can be used as a cheap stethoscope. You put a phone on someone's chest, the microphone pointing close to someone's heart, and you turn up the the AirPods to their highest level, and people are saying that this is loud enough and detailed enough to be used as a temporary stethoscope. It only takes one sharp shock of loud noise in a scenario like that, in a situation like that, to further damage your hearing. This is a horrible solution. I was at Costco yesterday. We were just picking up some groceries, and they have their little pharmacy area, and then they've got you can go and get your eyes tested, and great deals if you have to wear glasses, like Costco glasses, really super cool. And right next to that, they had a new little bench that I'd never noticed before, full of hearing aids. It's so convenient where you can buy a $130 pair of AirPods. Hearing aids are only going to cost you $1,500 at Costco, and that's probably if you have some kind of insurance which covers hearing aids. Really nice hearing aids with great Bluetooth compatibility with your devices and really excellent noise modeling and canceling microphones with great seals. Like they do a full medical grade mold of your ear to help protect what hearing you have left. I mean, those only go for $5,000, some as high as $7,000. NBD, go ahead and listen on your super cheap earbuds today. And again, those costs all help Apple's bottom line, giving you the cheapest possible kit that they can. I mean, AirPods, you can't even adjust a seal in the ear. They won't pay pennies for an intraoral bud to help seal your ear, because later in life, you'll front the costs. You pay the bill for your hearing loss later in life, and not later in life, like in your 30s, in your 40s. That is so disgusting. And that this is being heralded as some great magnanimous gesture from Apple makes me want to puke. It's just absolutely terrible. It's so horrible. I can't believe this is where we're at. Again, Apple helped create this problem. How can you listen to music 24/7, 365, never unplug, always have days worth of music in your pocket, ready to go, plug in the cable? We're going to give you a pair of earbuds in the box with great, loud, bassy drivers. Man, awesome. How great is this? And in your 30s, you're suffering from pervasive hidden hearing loss. You can't hear anyone around you in a group. You go out to a nightclub, you go out to a bar, the conversation is lost on you, and you're desperately trying to read lips from people around you. You do okay if you take a hearing test in a controlled studio-grade environment where everything's really quiet, but all of that damage just from constant, unending pounding on your eardrums, you get to pay for that. You get to front that bill. You got your pretty little gadget and your fashionable white earbuds, but you also get to pay the costs of fixing that problem later on. But how awesome that Apple can also sell you something which will probably also continue to degrade your hearing, but gives you a built-in microphone attachment so you can hear better if you're in one of those situations. How nice of them. They're so altruistic. Again, makes me want to puke. The last story, and this leads me into discussion on iPhone 10 strategies. Let me actually pull up the video. I still have the Reddit link up here. I'm gonna just run this while I talk under it. So SquareTrade sells insurance, so we should probably not completely trust everything that they say about phone durability. At least we look at the teardowns from iFixit. But SquareTrade took a crack at the iPhone XS and the XS Max. And unsurprisingly, a glass-on-glass sandwich breaks really easily. Let me get to here. So this is... let me skip this back. Now, surprisingly, in their testing, the iPhone XS Max did better than the iPhone XS, but neither phone survived a drop from 6 feet landing on its back or on its face. So that busted back that you see right there, if you do not have Apple Care, will cost you around $400 to fix. There are no components. It's just glass. It's just the back of the phone. $400. And I believe on the XS Max, it's $500 to fix busted glass on the back of the phone. It costs more to replace the glass on the back of an iPhone XS Max than it would be to buy, or it costs the same, I should say, as it would be to buy a OnePlus 6, which is arguably almost as good of a phone. So, not super stoked. Not super stoked about that strategy. I got to drink some water. I'm starting to get those weird swallows. From Steve DeRoche. They're busted either way, but they're less busted, if I understand correctly. Your phone is unusably damaged, but it's less unusably damaged on the iPhone XS Max. I got into a really fun Twitter conversation, just, reminiscing for days gone by with, who was it? With Sudden Death, at Sudden Death, Jake Webb. Just talking about all of the other phones that we used to have that we could shop as competition. I'm always going to point to like a Note 4. I just think one of the best phones ever made of all time. Just freaking amazing hallmark of phone manufacturing. But the LG G4 with my Oxblood leatherback, my Moto X2 with my Horween blue leatherback, all of the Lumia devices that were made out of that absolutely gorgeous injection molded polycarb, just vibrant colors, great shapes, great hand feel, shiny and matte finishes, and they looked and felt so premium. But they're made out of cheap plastic, and somehow glass of all materials wins this argument. Or all the other skins. Like, I'm still wholeheartedly gonna support manufacturers like Toast. Like, go get some semi-permanent wood panels to put on your phone. Like, it's not really going to protect you against a really bad drop, but it's going to help you hold on to the phone a little bit better without any of that BS from like a Neil deGrasse Tyson that, while you were out there dropping your phone, I studied the blade of flipping my phone around like a soldier, so I never drop my phone. I am impervious to phone drops, for I am Neil deGrasse Tyson. Which brings me to my iPhone XS review strategy. My iPhone XS is on the way. I really agonized over the decision to buy a XS or a XR or try and dig up some kind of loaner device. But ultimately, reading through the comments on patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, I ultimately decided it would be in my best interest to cover future iOS situations, software, apps. I'm really interested in talking more about augmented reality, so Apple has to be a part of that conversation. And for as much as I love my iPhone SE, that this is still, hands down, the best product Apple has ever accomplished. The best designed, the best looking, the best power to performance, the best price to performance ratio Apple has ever achieved. With it being so old, this can't be my iOS test bed for years to come. I do have to move on. So I'm opting for the iPhone XS. I'm just getting the base model storage because I really don't care to use this as my daily driver. And I am not going to do an iPhone XS review. Not a standalone, this is the phone and the review of the phone review. The only reason I am able to throw the funds at a phone which ultimately is costing close to $1,400 just for the phone and for some kind of warranty to protect it, because it's going to be a long-term review product, and minor damage to the phone costs hundreds of dollars to repair, if it even can be repaired. The only reason why I'm able to do that is through the direct contribution of folks on Patreon. So the first videos that are going to be going up for my iPhone XS coverage are going to be Patreon exclusives. The audio review talking about speaker tech and how terrible their dongle strategy is now that there is no dongle in the box. And the only product you get for audio with a $1,000 smartphone is a product that will damage your hearing, are the earpods that come in the box, and earpods that can't be used with a MacBook, that can't be used with any other type of product that could listen to audio. Oh, no, no. Don't be cheap. Give Apple more money so that you can properly connect good headphones, or you gotta go Bluetooth. Gotta go Bluetooth if you want to listen between your phone and your laptop, obviously. So that's where we're at. There is going to be an in-depth audio examination of what the iPhone can do, and then there is going to be a super in-depth camera examination. But those are Patreon exclusives. After I wrap up those videos, I'm going to be looking at some other topics to discuss, but I don't really feel it's even worth reviewing the phone as a whole. Sharing my experiences doesn't really seem to move the needle at all. And there's no video I can craft on the new generation of iPhones that doesn't begin and end with my opinion that these are terrible propositions in terms of value for money. These are terrible solutions in getting your bang for buck. And all we see is a company which is leveraging their entrenched user base to jack up prices to an astonishing degree for products which are just normal, everyday computing devices. That an iPhone XS, an iPhone XR, an iPhone XS Max does not do anything better or anything special or anything unique against the competition, except that it saves you the shame of having the wrong color messages in iMessage. We wouldn't want to be shamed into having green messages in iMessage. That would be the worstest. And that's it. That's now the price to get into those Apple services. And I think that that's almost consumer hostile. I think that that's a bad turn of affairs, which makes me most upset for iOS users. It doesn't affect me in the slightest on Android. I don't use their products as my daily driver. But I have a lot of friends in my circles. I have a lot of family in my social circles that I'm very concerned about. They are going to be harmed by some very consumer ruthless pricing strategies from Apple. And eventually, I do believe it's going to turn up the heat on Android manufacturers too. Will Samsung release a Galaxy S10 priced the same as the cheap iPhone? What are we going to do about that? Remember, Google made the jump from the Nexus to the Pixel largely on jacking up prices to match iPhones. The Pixel wasn't any special improvement over the Nexus. It was just $100 or $150 price jump so that it looked like Google's iPhone. That's not a good way to do business, but you have to. Because if consumers see a Galaxy S10 at $750 and a cheap iPhone at $750, well, the Galaxy S10 is as good as the cheap iPhone, but I want the good phone. So I better get the iPhone. That's the better phone to get. So that sucks all the fun out of tech discussions when the market is that manipulated or is that stacked against consumer sentiment in a fashion sense, right? I don't know anything Louis Vuitton. I don't care about paying that much for advertising a label. So it's super frustrating. This is a terrible place to be as a tech enthusiast, as a tech fan. And again, I think the people who are going to suffer the most are the people who are locked into Apple's ecosystem. I want to be an advocate for them. I want to have conversations with them. But what can I tell them? Who can I tell them to go to? I'm not going to tell someone who's super entrenched and has a ton of stuff in their iTunes catalog and has purchased a ton of apps on iOS to just switch ecosystems. That's not a solution. I would have to say, have a long, hard think about how do you disentangle yourself from that relationship with Apple? Because at least when one manufacturer screws up in Android land, I can kind of I still have to do business with Google ultimately. So again, that's never going to be totally clean. But if a Samsung screws up, I can recommend an LG. I can recommend a Moto. I can recommend an HTC. There are ways to disentangle yourself from one specific manufacturer. You can't do that with Apple. The only thing I can recommend people is like, use a really old iPhone, I guess, because I love my iPhone SE, and Apple refused to give me an iPhone SE too. So I don't know. And also, it's just, this phone's been talked to death. This phone was talked to death before it was even shipping out to people. And we had day one reviews. Again, when you have day one reviews, why should I even bother? That pie's been baked. Ugh. So anyway, yes, that is going to be the iPhone XS strategy. I want to have some editorials on value. I think a lot of people are putting out videos because they're concerned about this, but it's kind of too late. It's kind of too late to walk this back. The $1,000 smartphone era is upon us. So all of those brands that we've kind of taken for, leading the way, producing the premium top tier flagship phones, all now have to figure out what their response strategy to an iPhone XS is. And I think increasingly what we're going to see a lot of companies land on is getting us to pay more for less. The iPhone XS is an amazing example of how you can get locked-in consumers to pay more for less. So with my $1,400 investment into a phone that is just a normal, regular, everyday phone that doesn't bring anything special to the discussion, I will never make back that $1,400 in YouTube video traffic, but I will be spending a not insignificant amount of time talking about how bad of a deal this has become. So that's what we're going to be doing. So I want to get back to something a little bit happier. Definitely start kicking in Q&A questions. We've got a solid 20 minutes here to talk, wrapping up this podcast, wrapping up this live stream. But I want to get back to Andrew Wallace, his super chat. Ways to improve audio quality. I know Andrew's on a Mate 9, which has a built-in headphone jack, but it's kind of a mediocre performer. For dongles, my advice for a while was to try and use the Pixel dongle. The first generation Pixel dongle. I actually just learned something new about this not too recently. Fairly recently. Not too recently? Fairly recently. Wow, my brain just totally messed that up. That there is actually a high impedance mode on the first generation Pixel dongle, which gets you really close to the amp output of the Axon 7. It's right in that territory of Axon 7 and LG quad DAC amp output, but it triggers at a much higher resistance. So where like an LG G7, once you kick close to 50 ohms, just super loud amp kicks on. It's really easy to get that amp to trigger its super loud mode. The Pixel dongle, the first generation Pixel dongle, could do something similar, but at much, much higher resistances, like closer to 120, 150 ohms. It would have a higher amp output. That used to be my recommendation. Now I don't know what to tell people. The second generation Pixel dongle doesn't seem to perform as well, doesn't seem to boost as loud, and the quality seems to be geared towards software that has yet to arrive. So the big argument for the second generation Pixel dongle is it's going to improve battery life, and it's built for the Pixel and for Android Pie. So connecting the second generation dongle to my OnePlus 6 running Pi, man, did it not perform well. So I'm really hoping to see any other manufacturer step into the space. But for right now, I don't have a clear-cut recommendation on what to use. The Razer dongle is kind of a better solution than the headphone jack that's built into a phone like the Mate 9. But I don't know that it's so much better that the $20 you pay for the Razer dongle is worth the inconvenience of using a headphone dongle on a phone that also has a built-in headphone jack. So I don't know that I'm definitely not bullish about that as a solution. Until a few other manufacturers jump into this space, I'm still dying. I'm still hoping against hope that a company like Sennheiser or Audio-Technica will make some type of USB audio device that can properly drive their headphones and headsets. I mean, just think about if you could get a $50 USB-C audio dongle from Sennheiser that could drive their hardcore studio-grade headphones, that would be a huge consumer benefit. Think about how much better it would be to plug that into a laptop. You know, just pop the USB-C right out of your phone, pop that USB-C right into your laptop, and enjoy phenomenal audio quality from one of the most respected recording manufacturers the world has ever seen. Would make me so happy, but we don't have that. I haven't seen that. I don't think we'll get that, or at least we won't get it anytime soon. The other solution I think is worth mentioning, I think is worth bringing up, is going to a 2-device strategy. If audio is a primary use for you, and you have a phone that's just kind of mediocre when it comes to audio, I think I would be game to recommend some other type of multimedia device to help you carry that out. If it's some kind of standalone music player like my Fio, maybe that's what it is. But for the price that you pay for a Fio, I think you could easily pick up a lovingly used LG V20 and get nearly the same audio quality, really properly drive audiophile grade headphones and a mobile device with a replaceable battery and decent cameras. And it would be a far nicer Android experience than what these dedicated media players provide, because the actual UI on these things is usually awful. So that also might be another strategy too if you want to go 2-device. I've been so disappointed, and I think we've all been let down by manufacturers playing in the USB-C space. USB audio has not caught up to the pervasiveness and the accessibility of a centuries-old phono jack. The 3.5 millimeter headphone jack is a true, non-licensable, universal standard connector. And it's useful for more than just plugging in headphones. You can do other things with it too. There are other accessories that can take advantage of it, but that's not profitable. A company needs to get rid of it and deliver something proprietary, and that makes you do more business with that company. If it's Apple, if it's HTC, if it's Motorola, any of these companies that are putting out proprietary headphone solutions, and then you're stuck. You have to buy something that's more expensive to get the job done than what we used to do, and that's super frustrating. Lots of people bringing up different types of solutions here. The Fio portable USB DAC with a USB-C to micro USB type OTG cable has worked in the past, hasn't been working as consistently getting into Oreo. I have had some issues with some of my little Fio DACs not being recognized properly by different devices. Brett Carlton, have you ever tried LDAC or whatever Sony has for their high-resolution audio codec? I have tried LDAC. I put it in the same bucket as aptX. aptX HD, LDAC, to a lesser degree, AAC compression when you're going over an SBC connection on Bluetooth 4.2. It's still all compressed audio. It can sound better because of better compression, but I still have issues with the consistency of the connection. I've yet to encounter a Bluetooth solution that doesn't wig out when I go from car to my individual headphone solutions. Even on Samsungs, which have proven to be some of the most consistent, I still run into those issues where 1 out of 10 or 1 out of 20, I have to manually switch things over. And then I still have connectivity issues. Like I guess my ass is a Faraday cage, because if my phone's in my back pocket and my earbuds are around my neck and in my ears, or my cans are on my head, if I crouch, I get skips, I get dropouts, I get disconnections. Like I can't, that drives me nuts when it works like 80% of the time. You know what doesn't work 80% of the time, but works closer to like 99% of the time, is a cable. Is the only standard that has kept me mainline connected and gives me the variety of listening experiences that I want. I can choose different types of earbuds. I can choose sportier earbuds. I can choose monitor style earbuds. I can go closed back. I can go open back. I can go gaming headset style. I can go more corporate telephone call style. And sometime this week, I'm hoping to meet up with a manufacturer here in Los Angeles that does custom ear molds. They make these really nice in-ear monitors, and they have their own solution for doing 3D printed in-ear molds. And the prices aren't terrible. So I'm going to hopefully hook up with them sometime this week and do a video on their kit too, because God, my old in-ear monitors that had custom molds, those things started flaking, and I just haven't gotten around to replacing them. I've just been using foam on my Nobles. It is so nice. It is so nice when a pliable material is built for your ears and perfectly seals like the entire ear cavity. It is gorgeous. And we don't really have those. We don't really have those for AirPods or any other just sort of Bluetooth solution right now. So I want to talk more about stuff like that. Got a couple other questions here. From Podcast Stage, where do you buy your high-res music audio from? Honestly, the first step I take in investigating high-res music is whether or not the artist sells anything directly. If there's any solution to pull it directly from the recording artist. After that, there's like a whole variety of different stores, and I end up doing that gimmicky thing where I just Google high-res audio and then search through the results and then land on a store. The other thing that I'll still pull from, you can still sometimes find international DVDA and SACDs. Terrible solution, but you can pull rips from there. And then I still do a lot of just FLAC in 1644.1. Like it's archival quality for CD quality, but at least it's the purest source of what we could get if I'm out of any other options. From K. Jones, it seems like the industry is caving into Bluetooth. NAD's Bluetooth Viso HP70 headphones claim to give audiophile quality. And no. I mean, if we're talking about audiophiles, there is no such thing as Bluetooth audiophile. It doesn't exist. You need cables, you need amps, you need drivers, you need armatures, you need balance, you need the right listening environment. Like you can kind of see over on the side on the blue light, that's a corner of the room that I'll move over to, that the walls are covered with acoustic blankets for when I do my headphone listening comparisons, just so that I'm trying to get the cleanest environment for consuming audio. Audiophile means something. Just sort of cheapening that term with wireless solutions doesn't help the industry at all, and it just conflates what benefits you do get for consumers. Like again, aptX, LDAC, other types of Bluetooth compression, you can have better compression, but it's still compression. And it's still never going to be as dedicated a connection as a cabled solution. And the more information you send, the more likely you're going to drop out pieces of that chain. Brett Carlton, how do you get 24-bit or good audio in car from phone wired solutions? You plug a good output into your stereo input. I mean, that's pretty easy. If your car stereo has an input jack, use decently shielded cables and utilize a source which has good output. I mean, the little sticker right here says high-res audio. I hate that branding. So we have a term in audio. We have a term in recording for quality. It's called fidelity. Resolution can be appropriated for that discussion, but it's really the wrong word. But yeah, so this has a line output, and it also has a headphone output. So I can choose whichever output I want, and then I plug that into my car, and that's properly driving whatever line input my car expects, and then it goes out to my speakers. And thanks to the fact that my car had to have the accessories package with all of the collision detection warnings and the radar assisted cruise control, that actually sounds pretty good because it also bumped up the stereo package in my car. It's not amazing, but it's better than most cars I can afford. From Ruari, you've been asking about this a lot. Is there much difference between Snapdragon and Exynos DACs in the new Samsung phones? And I have no idea. I have not handled an Exynos phone since the Galaxy S6, and I'm not going to pay to ship in a Galaxy phone just to do some comparisons like that, and Samsung refuses to send me anything. So that's off the table for me to cover as of yet. If anyone wants to send me an Exynos phone, I'd be happy to test it for you. From Hawan on Periscope, you should try the Apogee Groove. I definitely want to dig into some more Apogee kit. I got into Apogee largely because of recording tech. They were a great solution back in the day for Mac users looking to get into home recording, and I got my start by helping people set up home recording solutions for voice acting. So when they started doing other things too, like I believe it was Apogee that partnered with Sennheiser to make a mini lightning connector ADC, an analog to digital converter. So you'd get a little lavalier mic from Sennheiser. The processing unit was built by Apogee, if I remember correctly. And that was a great solution on iPhones. That was a phenomenal lav mic for its time. From Aditya Anil, Juan, regarding the signal loss could be due to some gadget on your body or your atmospheric mineral content. You can just say it, man. It's like you got a bad case of swamp ass and it's killing your Bluetooth. From Ruari, I was half thinking of selling my Note 9 for an LG G7 just for the audio quality. Am I mad? I really want people to treat their ears. I had so much fun reviewing the little creative DAC that I put out a review on last week. It's this $150, and it's one of the loudest headphone amps. It's not the highest quality, but it's higher quality than most built-in audio solutions. But it is so scary loud. Driven at its lowest setting. They have a low amp output and a high amp output, which again, it's rated up to 600 ohm headphones. But all of my consumer gear is under, well, it's around 100 ohms when we're talking about resistance, when we're talking about impedance. On its lowest setting, about a third or about 40% up the volume meter in Windows was scary loud. And just the fact that it has a whole bunch of like little techie fun things, awesome. Love it. I love treating my ears, and I love that for $150, I can treat my ears in a similar way that it takes me a 4K gaming monitor and a top-of-the-line GPU to treat my eyes, right? So for like 1/20th the cost of what it costs to improve my gaming visuals, I can radically improve my gaming audio. That's huge. So if you care about treating your ears, a move from a Note to a G7 is going to come with a ton of compromises. Battery life, you're not going to get as good a battery life. If you like the S Pen, well, obviously that goes away. But you get some fun perks out of that. The boombox speaker mode and the headphone output is second to none. And I absolutely adore LG audio for that. So I don't think you're crazy, but just balance your pros and cons. What cons can you live with for the benefits that you want? And I think you do really well with that. Lots of people talking about V30s. Podcast stage, what are your thoughts on plugins like SonarWorks TrueFi in order to get flatter headphones? Good, bad, or blasphemy? I have not used them. I don't actually know what you're talking about for Sonar. So I'd have to give them a listen. I'm a big fan of flat EQ, but reviewing the Audiera A01, they're the Bluetooth headphones that I reviewed that also have a listening test built into manipulating the EQ. I do think there's a good argument to be made for compensating frequencies of sound in the music based on your individual biology. Otherwise, I'm with most audio snobs that the best EQ is a flat EQ. That you're the most consistent way to appreciate what the artist has created in the most consistent fashion across all genres of music is just to try and keep any manipulation out of your system and to go for some notion of audio purity. So if that's what they're trying to achieve, then I think that will resonate with a lot of people, myself included, but I'd need to give it a listen first. From Farid. So if headphones use Wi-Fi instead of Bluetooth, it could send higher bitrate audio, right? But the headphones will weigh a ton from the battery alone. I don't think that's true. I don't believe that would be true. You would need bigger batteries. That absolutely is true. But I don't think that the overall experience of going to Wi-Fi for audio would necessarily be a deal breaker for a consumer grade device that is portable and easy to use. You guys remember when the Chromecast came out? The second generation Chromecast, the Puck, the circular Chromecast came out. We saw two versions. There was the Chromecast for video, and then there was Chromecast audio. And then Google kind of abandoned their audio strategy again, but I still have one. And you could hook that up to a USB battery pack and use that as like a portable Wi-Fi device. And it had an output. So you could have a direct 3.5 millimeter output. So you could hook headphones into it. It was terribly cumbersome to use, but you could do that as a Wi-Fi listening solution years ago. The second generation Chromecast, years ago. So I think we could still do that today. I think the problem for Wi-Fi audio is Android is kind of dumb. So when you connect something like, for example, look at all the cameras. You can connect your phone to a camera using Wi-Fi. And then what does your phone do? Your phone freaks out that there's no internet attached to this Wi-Fi, and it tries to get you off of that Wi-Fi. But when your Wi-Fi is connected, it also aborts your LTE data connection too. So until an operating system gets smarter about multi-point Wi-Fi connections, Wi-Fi for an accessory is no-go for something that would be mainline like audio. Like I'm going to have headphones connected to my phone all day. I'm going to take phone calls. I'm going to listen to audio, listen to podcasts, listen to music, watch videos, play games. All of that has an audio component. I can't do that with Wi-Fi because then my phone can't connect to any data services because it's connected to my headphones. So I think that's probably about as good a place as any to start wrapping things up. And let me clean this out. Oh, there is one more question. I've gotten this one a lot, so I think I should probably address it too, but let me just take a sip of water here. Okay, so this comes from Prashant. Hey Juan, what if I have $40 headphones? Would a G7 make a significant difference in sound quality compared to other smartphones? And it's likely that it would not. I think all of these discussions need to be balanced against a holistic approach to your personal area network of gadgets. So the cost isn't necessarily indicative of the quality of listening experience. On this channel, it's a video that's doing fairly well for me. I spent a little time reviewing a $20 pair of earbuds from a company that makes just radically cheap gear. And so the KZ-ES4, if you want to look that up on youtube.com/WanBagNow, $20, and they're monitor style earbuds, dual driver. They sound so much better than they deserve to for $20. It's not hard finding earbuds that sound better. It is phenomenally difficult to find earbuds that sound better for $20. And that really shines when I plug them into a phone like the G7 or I plug them into a dedicated media player like my Fio. Because we took the time to match different pieces together. If you got sport earbuds, you probably aren't likely going to hear any substantial difference moving from a Galaxy to an LG to an iPhone headphone dongle. All of those are going to kind of perform around the same because a pair of sport earbuds are more about building beefier cable shielding and a better woven nylon design and a more robust microphone housing than they are. You're paying more for all of that ruggedness than you are for directly improving the audio quality of each earbud driver. When you take just a little time to match a few pieces together and not at an extreme cost, there are so many phenomenal solutions that are now very cost effective, great price performance ratios if you do a little digging and a little searching for good kit. you can really maximize the benefit of an investment in a phone like the LG G7. And then you have a great platform for when you want to climb higher. So if I want to listen on those KZ-ES4, I like the sound of those better on my G7 than I do on any of the Samsung phones that I've used, and definitely any of the Dongle phones that I've ever used. But then I can take those up to my Sennheiser 599s, a great open back pair of headphones, and plug that into my G7. And man, that's great too. Or I can take them to my studio monitors, like my old HD25s. And man, that's way better too. So for me, it's also about where do you see yourself going for your audio consumption over the next couple of years, and making a targeted purchase like that might be to your benefit too. But if you're just looking like, I've got these $40 earbuds, what $800 phone should I buy? Then no, you won't see any difference in what you're going to hear based on a $40 headphone purchase. And again, I mean, really kind of balance your priorities there. Are you choosing which $800 phone to buy based on a $40 earbud purchase? Okay, so let's actually wrap this up for real. I want to say, first of all, huge shout out to all of the people in this live chat. I saw many more people joining from Periscope this week. Not that I streamed this anywhere else than where you're watching it. But no, I really do appreciate it, because we touched on some really dicey topics, and I asked a lot of you in terms of political commentary and political chat. And again, time and time again, the majority of you who are here because you have a vested interest in actually joining a conversation and not just stomping around in some kind of genital measuring contest in owning your opposition. We have real issues facing us in the tech community, and the only way we can get there is if we take this type of discipline out into our conversations in the real world. And I think we need to take this time. Why I love doing this Monday morning podcast is not just to have the initial knee-jerk burst of social media around a news story be the only discussion we can have about a sensitive topic in the tech community or in politics. So I cannot thank you enough for joining this conversation in earnest, especially those of you who disagree with me, because I know I can be a snarky asshole about a lot of this stuff, but I feel it's in good service to strong debate. And if we have strong debate, then we're all better for it. Now, coming up on the channel, like I said, a few more audio topics. I'm going to be spending time with dongles, and I hate them, so you're going to be in for at least one more Cranky Juan video. But I'm really hoping I can pull off a meet and greet with that audio manufacturer here in LA to talk about ear molds, because boy howdy, if you were looking at spending money to treat your ears, and this turns out to work well, because I really hope it works well, because ear molds used to be prohibitively expensive for a lot of consumers out there. This will be a major review for me to share with you guys, and I'm almost positive it'll get like 1,000 hits on YouTube, because people just don't care about this stuff. But if you're watching this right now, I don't want you to go deaf earlier than you should. So I'm still going to do a video on this, and then probably the end of this week, I'll start digging into iPhone XS commentary. Likely the beginning of next week, we'll have our audio review out, and I'll hopefully have collected camera samples to start showing that off, start piecing together an iPhone XS camera review. That's going to take a lot of work, so please be patient on that, because if you're watching a camera review and it's like 4 photos and a video sample, nah, brah. Nah. We can do better. So thank you so much for joining. Thank you so much for commenting. If you would like to consider supporting production on this channel, please head over to SomeGadgetGuy.com, where you will find a Support Some Gadget Guy link with all of my affiliates. If you want to get games through the Humble Bundle, I've become a huge fan. My Steam catalog is huge thanks to the Humble Bundle. If you want to invest in a better beverage delivery system, something, I don't know, with a really funny tech pun about megapickles, you can pick yourself up a megapickle mug. Yeah, I mean, it just makes every beverage taste better. Immediate disclaimer, it does not do anything to affect the taste of your beverages. But wow, that is the most delicious water I've ever consumed. And then also, please consider supporting directly through, if you have the means to, if you have the ability to, patreon.com/SomeGadgetGuy, where I host all of my exclusive audio and camera deep dives. We've got a ton of stuff coming up. I'm planning out my month of October very carefully to get to as many of these devices as I can. And I am one man. And that's it. Like, I do all the social media, I do all the video capture, all the video editing, all the commentary myself. So how we get through October is going to be a really tough month for me. So I think a lot of that conversation is going to be held first, and some of it predominantly on Patreon. So I hope you'll at least consider checking it out. An amazing group of people over on the Patreon too. A phenomenal tech community. I am so lucky to have people following my production over there. So folks, that wraps us up for the Monday Morning Tech Chat Show. You know where you can find me next week, as we're going to be digging into even more tech news commentary and more news and reviews throughout the week. You can catch me around the internet at SomeGadgetGuy on the Twitters, on the Facebooks, on the Instagrams, and I will catch you on the next podcast. Thanks so much for watching.